Your song does not have to be a true story, but it does have to be true. Let's talk about it. So the big idea here is essentially my third law of songwriting, which is every song is fiction, but it must reveal ultimate truth. And this is basically another way of saying that emotional honesty and the honesty of humanity and the human condition and how people work and just being honest about the real world that we live in is more important than factual accuracy. Now, of course, I shouldn't have to say this, but this only applies to art that is fiction, not to things that are actually claiming to be factually true. I think something that will help make this clear is to talk about how there can be things that are technically true but communicate lies, and things that are technically not factually true but do communicate the truth, because that will help to illuminate what exactly we're talking about here. So the first category we have to talk about is technically true lies, such as free range or cage-free eggs. These are things that technically it's true that the chickens might not live in a cage, but they still live in a small building where they are way overcrowded still. So it seems to be trying to communicate to you, hey, these chickens have great lives. They have dreams. They live out a wonderful life. These are happy eggs. But that's a total lie, even though technically the claim that they are cage-free is true. This is what we want to avoid in our songs. But the opposite that we probably do want to do with our songs is fiction that tells ultimate truth. A great example of this would be It's a Wonderful Life, which is not a factually true story. And by the way, it doesn't claim to be, it's fiction. But the reason that that story is so powerful and timeless and great, and people still watch it every year, even though basically every human being involved with the making of that film is probably dead because it's that old, is because it contains ultimate truth. The way that people act is very true to life, and even the way things conclude is very true to life. In the end, the main character does figure out the truth, that what really matters most is how he impacted the people around him, not whether or not he ever got to build skyscrapers. But also, in the end, he doesn't just magically get his hearing back in his deaf ear. In the end, he isn't just rewarded by the angel or by anybody else with, hey, you also get to build skyscrapers like you always wanted and get out of this town like you always wanted, because that's not real life. Instead, he learns to appreciate that he does have a wonderful life, even though he is still suffering from a sacrifice he made to save his little brother as a kid, and even though he will never ever end up building skyscrapers like he dreamed. So he doesn't really get what he wants, but he does realize that what he has is even better than the thing that he wanted. Now, I could go on forever about this point because it's probably the greatest film of all time, in my opinion, but it is something that, even though it's fiction, is communicating ultimate truth. And this is something that our songs should do too. Now, the first part of this law, that every song is fiction, seems to be something that only songwriters of all the artists need to actually be told, because painters, movie makers, novelists all seem to understand that, yeah, of course we're making fiction. It doesn't have to be what's going on in my life right now. But for some reason, songwriters often seem to get it in their head that they need to write about their life, and even more specifically, what's going on in their life right now, and it needs to be factually accurate, which is just wild to me. You're writing a song. It is incredibly limiting to limit your songwriting to just things that you have specifically experienced and all the facts that go along with it. And it's really limiting if you limit yourself only to what's going on in your life right now. And by the way, it can make you self-destructive, because when your life is actually going great and there's not really that much to write about that's really that moving or compelling, because honestly, life's just good, you're happy all the time, then you're not going to be able to write great songs, because you're just beholden or a slave to the moment. And you don't want that. You're an artist, not a journalist. So again, it's important that something is emotionally honest and is true ultimately, even if it is not necessarily a factually true story. But hey, if you don't believe me, let's go into some quotes from people maybe you will believe. First is a quote from Bob Dylan. "A song doesn't have to be your life story. It's gotta carry a truth that hits people where they live in their heart hearts whether it happened or not. Or Neil Young, who says, I don't care if the story in the song really happened. What matters is if it feels real, if it says something true about being human. Or how about Bruce Springsteen, who says, I make up stories in my songs, but they're true in what they say about life, about struggle, love, or chasing dreams. That's the truth people feel, not the facts. Or how about Tracy Chapman, who says, I try to write songs that are honest and human. If they're about real emotions, love, pain, justice, they'll still speak to people long after I'm gone. That's what I aim for. Which, by the way, if you look into it, the song Fast Car, which is probably her most famous and best song and certainly is a timeless, all-time great song, that song is not factually true in the case of it's not a real story. It's an amalgamation of different things that she saw. It's true to the human experience, but it's not a factually true story, and it's a great song that isn't autobiographical and isn't factually accurate. So in your song, worry less about the factual truth of what's going on in your life, and honestly, be less concerned about what's going on in your life. Write about things that are ultimately true, though, about the human condition, about loss, about love, about hope, about all those sorts of things. Keep it real. Put yourself in other people's shoes and write songs from their point of view, whether those be real people or fictional characters that you make up. And you can even do things where you take sort of yourself and you say, okay, if this and this and this happened to me and I was 70 years old, how would I feel in that case? You can probably project forward and empathize with a future you that doesn't really exist and honestly probably never will exist, because whatever you predict is going to happen in the case of this song is probably not really going to happen in your life. But you should be able to empathize with other people and combine different things that you have experienced to still talk accurately about things that you haven't specifically experienced. Just as a quick example, hopefully you haven't experienced a spouse passing away. But if you've experienced somebody breaking up with you and you never see them anymore, so that's somebody that you romantically loved that you no longer see anymore, and you also have experienced losing a loved one, like a grandparent or a parent. Now that of course is not a romantic love, but that is death. If you take those two experiences and put them together, you should be able to project how you would feel fairly accurately if you did have a spouse pass away, because you know what it's like to love someone romantically and never see them anymore. And you also know what it's like to know that a loved one is passed away and you're never going to see them again in this life. So even though you may have never experienced losing somebody that you romantically love to death, that's something that you still could be able to write very accurately about in a way that would really resonate with people, that's emotionally honest, even though you have never factually experienced that thing. So with all your songs, ask yourself, is this honest? Even if it's fiction. Because the truth in songwriting is not about facts. It's about representing the world and humanity accurately and honestly. Now, of course, the ultimate truth in your songs, or perhaps lack thereof, is going to be contained in the lyrics, because the lyrics are where the story is actually being told. And if you want some help writing more emotionally honest and overall just great lyrics, be sure to check out my 6-step lyric writing checklist. It breaks lyric writing down into steps so that you no longer suffer from looking at a blank page and just saying, improvise brilliant poetry, because that's too much pressure, and honestly, almost nobody can do that, or at least they can't do it well consistently. And honestly, if you've ever thought that you suck at lyric writing, the truth is it probably isn't that. It's just that you're setting yourself up to fail because you don't have a process. So be sure to check this out, songwritingtheory.com/lyric checklist. Breaks it down into smaller steps, makes it so that you can write lyrics that you are proud of. Be sure to check it out. My free gift to you. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. I'll talk to you in the next one.